The tech entrepreneur Elon Musk isn't exactly shy when it comes to making bold claims about his company's solutions and capability. That's why a spot of billionaire banter between Musk and Australian software guru Mike Cannon-Brookes turned into one of the most effective and rapid case studies the world has ever seen. In 2017, a series of catastrophic storms ravaged Australia, resulting in impact and stress on the majority fossil fuel-driven power infrastructure. The politics at the time suggested that any switch to renewable energy sources would be a disaster, and expanding their coal goals was the only forward. Cannon-Brookes found a tweet by Elon Musk that suggested this was all nonsense. And furthermore, he could find and implement the most efficient solution in only 100 days. Cannon-Brookes replied and offered to find the funding if the Tesla CEO was serious about delivering on yet another ambitious boast. Musk fired back immediately with, "Tesla will get the system installed and working 100 days from contract signature or it is free. That serious enough for you?" Incredibly, this claim was followed through. The contract was signed on the 29th of September 2017. And the pioneering Tesla 100-watt lithium-ion battery was installed at Hornsdale Power Reserve near Jamestown in South Australia in early December of the same year. Well, within the time frame promised. Australia should not have a solar power problem. Known for its vast landscapes and abundant sunshine, it should have been a global leader in solar energy adoption. But even with around 3,000 hours of sunshine per year, in 2010 only around 10% of its energy came from solar. The problem? Too much sun. The immense power projected from the sun's temperature of over 15 million degrees Celsius comes from a constant nuclear fusion that converts hydrogen into helium at the core to produce an out-of-this-world energy output equivalent to burning 91.2 billion megatons of TNT every single second. So, although it remains over 93 million miles away from our little blue and green planet, we are the beneficiaries of all that power, day after day after day. This is how the solar technology works. Solar panels are made up of photovoltaic or PV cells. They are installed on a property in the location that is able to catch as much sunlight as possible throughout the day and year. These cells are usually made from a semiconductor material, usually silicon, that catch and absorb photons from direct sunlight. Once absorbed, these photons set about their job of energizing electrons, knocking them loose from their atoms within the silicon through excitation. And these electrons aren't just left to roam free. The PV cells are equipped with electric fields that direct the electrons into a flow, creating an electric current. This direct current, or DC, is then converted into an alternating current, or AC, by an inverter to make it suitable for household use, powering kettles, lights, televisions all day and night for the people that live there. But what happens when the supply outweighs the demand? If the power generated isn't directly consumed, then it will go to waste unless safely and correctly stored. For a long time, the answer here has been for rooftop solar owners to simply send it back to the grid. And in Australia, this seemed particularly fit for purpose. Their feed-in tariffs, or FIT for short, makes payments to solar power households for the energy that they create and do not use. These payments range from 5 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on the location and energy company responsible. There are two distinct types of FIT in Australia. Volumetric is based directly on the amount of electricity supplied back to the grid. And the slightly more complicated time-varying FIT offers different rates during the day to encourage energy exports during the peak demand times of the day, such as early mornings and early evenings. Until recently, this seemed like the perfect balance. It encouraged solar power adoption and offered some great incentives through reduced bills for solar panel owners. As the adoption reached its peak, another question emerged. What happens when this supply outweighs demand too? Well, in New South Wales, Australia, they're finding out. Over 650,000 homes are fitted with rooftop solar panels here, producing over 4 gigawatts of total solar capacity for the state. And it is now simply too much for the local electrical grid to handle the energy that is produced. So, the days of the feed-in tariffs look to be numbered, with a sun tax rising that will actually charge solar rooftop owners for the extra energy that they generate. So much for trying to help in a sustainable way. These solar export charges are designed to manage and maintain the influx of energy and ensure that the costs are fairly distributed across each customer. In July of this year, Ausgrid, the largest supplier on Australia's east coast, has implemented a charge of 1.2 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity generated back to the grid during the peak times of 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. People are also being asked to use their own electricity away from these peak times to avoid stress on the grid and find a new balance. But how practical will that be? The needs of family lives, business operations requirements, and the day-to-day reliance on energy during these times dictates that this will require some big lifestyle changes. Successful storage for all of this energy seems to be one of the frontrunners. With a capacity of 100 megawatts or 129 megawatt hours, Hornsdale Power Reserve was the largest lithium-ion battery anywhere in the world at the time. Its fast frequency response services improved grid stability, balancing supply and demand fluctuations, saving the Australian grid millions of dollars, reducing the need for reliance on gas-powered plants, and preventing costly blackouts. During a major power outage in the same month, it demonstrated its effectiveness, delivering power to the grid within milliseconds. It was such a success that just 3 years later, in 2020, it was expanded by 50% to provide 150 megawatts or 195 megawatts per hour. In 2024, there are several companies that followed suit to research and develop power storage. So much so that it now looks as though maintaining and storing energy will be just as big, if not a bigger concern for power companies. And the logic follows that if consumers can store their own energy, then an off-grid lifestyle looks more and more likely for a lot of us. A lifestyle with no sun tax and no reliance on anything apart from the great fiery ball in the sky looks incredibly tempting. The cost of realizing all this seems to be coming down to match demand too. The Tesla Powerwall 2 offers 13.5 kilowatt-hour capacity for just over $10,000. The LG Chem RE-SU isn't too far behind, with 10 kilowatts per hour for under $10,000. And with plenty of governments offering rebates and installation incentives as part of their investment in renewable energy, there could be a new renaissance of solar power rising on the horizon. The benefits of this new energy independence are clear. In green terms, if just 10% of homes in the US, for example, were to boldly go solar, it would reduce CO2 emissions by around 38 million tons every year. It isn't just the cost and sustainability credentials that are proving appealing either. With reduced vulnerability to power outages and grid failures, plus a massively lower monthly cost in the long term, off-grid living through solar power is certainly an enticing way forward. But that way forward could upset a large part of the infrastructure that our societies and some pretty big revenue-generating companies are built on. The global solar market is projected to grow from $52.5 billion in 2018 to a staggering $223 billion by 2026. This will mean a massive shift in the economic dynamics of our whole planet. Currently, there are around 840 million people in our world that do not have constant and reliable access to electricity. The rise of solar power represents an exciting role that will be important in bridging this energy equity gap to provide a better and better quality of life. and more economic opportunities for new businesses in developing these communities. However, it may also mean that new divisions and inequalities begin to rise. Although the price of setting up off-grid living is being driven down, for some families and in some areas, that might still be too expensive to commit to for quite a while. And if fossil fuel energy companies that have had it all their own way for a long time may be looking at huge drops in customers, then that can only mean one thing: rising prices for the low-income households that can't afford to be off-grid. In effect, the wealthier people will be benefiting, while the poorer people will be punished through prices. An all too familiar story, some might say. Looking directly at this supposedly bright future for solar power may be causing a few headaches for governments too. Managing a wholesale change to decentralized energy means a whole new set of regulatory frameworks, policy making, and admin will be required that would take years and cost lots and lots to produce and maintain. There is physical infrastructure to be considered too. The substations and pylons that silently dominate landscapes all over the world may be on a journey towards obsolescence. Will they still stand as disused relics, rusty reminders of energy ages that have been before? Or will there be a colossal effort to remove them? At what cost? And who will pay? One thing is for sure. Once again, all eyes will be on New South Wales in Australia to see how things progress. Renewable energy zones are in place all across the state, with goals to coordinate, streamline, and integrate solar into the grid more efficiently. Innovations such as community batteries are providing interesting ways to capture all the exported energy much more efficiently, and with an ultimate goal of 60% less carbon emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. It's clear they are taking the issue very seriously. So perhaps it won't be long before other areas of the world will be looking to do exactly the same, all looking for their own new energy-efficient days in the sun.
Remember to hit the subscribe button and ring that bell to stay updated with our latest content. And while you're here, why not check out another one of our exciting videos? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.